SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
In the previous topic, I made a statement that design is all about decoding a sign. So we try to decode, analyze, and then see how things are done. So if the surface looks like very shiny or dull, we try to find out how many times we have repeated a pattern to get that shine, or how many times we have repeated that particular pattern to get that dullness on the surface. There are often images that we can visualize. There are certain images, certain concepts that gives us some kind of automatic tendency of visualization. But there are certain concepts that it becomes troublesome to visualize them. Like when we say that it's a moonwalk. So it like certain thing appears to our mind. It like if somebody says or we get to hear or we imagine a golden surface, we quickly, like promptly, we visualize a surface that is shiny. So there are lots of similar ideas which are easy to visualize. There are also ideas which are not as easy as this to visualize. But finally, we get into a process where it's all about we decode, we see, we analyze, and we go on that way. With that, I'll also contradict the statement a little bit with another statement that design is all about fooling our eyes. So what we see is what is not there. What we see is what we perceive, but they may not exist there. So that is applicable for the virtual reality, and also in reality what we see and what we see as real are not actually real. So let's see how it works. So there are a few line drawings and we can quickly read them, identify them as a mango, a pear, an apple. Three of them will come under a category that is fruit. Any child will tell us that. But what are they actually? They're nothing but line, pattern, shapes, a formation, form, and also surface. So what we see here is not mango, it's not pear, it's not apple, but they're images of mango, pear, and apple. So this is how we perceive, and they may not be the reality. Now there are two kinds of textures that we come across. One is the visual texture. So we see a surface which appears to be rough. We touch it and the kind of sensation that we get is smooth. So that is fooling your eyes. There's a term called trompe-l'œil in art, which is known as how to fool one's eyes. So the surface is smooth, but it looks rough. The use of visual texture is vast in our use in the regular happening, but there are also textures which are actual. So there is one category that is visual texture, and the second category are the actual texture. Actual texture or real texture is also known as tactile texture. And this is opposite of visual texture, that we see some surface as rough. Upon touching, we find it rough. So these are the differences between the visual texture and actual texture. Think in terms of the sculpture. When we are making a sculpture with the traditional materials, for example, we are using marble and we are trying to create a surface which is smooth. Marble has thinner, smaller and closer particles which are integrated, so we can get a formation where we can do intricate carving, and also they have a good longevity because of the integrity that the stone has. Now, when we create a surface and we go there, we touch it, we get that smoothness there. But then maybe our purpose is to make a human figure, and the human body is not that cold and smooth. So that way we are fooled by the whole creation, that we try to give a surface that seems to be human skin, but they're not human skin at all. So otherwise also, when we use surfaces of stone or maybe metal, it can be clay or plaster. So in most of the cases, the surfaces are manipulated by the artist to give the sensation that the artist is deciding to convey to the viewer. Now, very interestingly, we see that there are formations where we do not hide a surface. For example, in some of the architecture, especially in modern architecture, when we have a structure that is made out of brick and we keep it open, we do not want to cover it with any kind of plastering and give it a smooth surface. We keep brick as brick, we keep cement as cement. We call it the honest use of material. And that is very common in the modern tradition. So that way it's a choice from the part of the designer or the part of the artist whether they're going to give the right message to the artist in terms of its visual texture or in terms of its tactile quality. So this is totally depending on the content or the subject matter and the suitability of the form of that matches with the subject matter. So in a way, we end up creating surfaces where we go, we touch it, and we feel that it just looks rough or smooth, but it's just the opposite there. So that way we are again coming down to the same solution, that we are basically repeating a pattern and nothing else. So when you touch a stone, it will give you a different sensation. After polishing, you'll get a complete different sensation. So it's up to the artist and the artist's decision whether to keep it rough or to keep it smooth. So when we create that, when we create some visual texture which is not the actual texture or tactile texture, we go for different tricks, and this is all about how we use our sense of pattern, how we repeat them. If we want to create a surface which is not very smooth, then we create breaks which gives it a sense of a surface which is uneven, dainty. And that way we again go by the value difference. We create a frequent change in the low value and high value contrast. So let's again go back to the gradients and see how we create surface that is otherwise rough, because when we are making the surface on a paper, the paper is smooth and we are creating some sensation which is up and down, rough, or it's something completely different. So when we create a surface where the gradients are proper and smooth, it looks smooth. When there's a break between that and the contrast is higher in terms of the high value contrast, that we have the range of the achromatic gray where so as we pick up a contrast of this and this will give us a rough feel. If we have a combination of this and this, which are placed in a close proximity, they will look smooth. The more will make it abrupt, it will look more rough. So black will give us a sense of a surface that is going deeper. The white should come forward. At the same time, when we create a surface that gives us a sensation of either this is a surface which is made out of fabric or maybe a cloth or a paper, or this is a woven surface. So these are the kind of visual message that they will carry further. With this, I'll try to give you some examples for your reference. That is when you go through the artworks by the cubist artists in their synthetic phase, when they're analyzing in the first phase and slowly at the last phase they're synthesizing objects there. So we categorize them as analytical cubism and synthetic cubism. In terms of the movement of, it's just a pattern, the way the movements that took place. So in the synthetic cubism, that was another step which is coming after the analysis. So after the analysis, the artist felt like synthesizing some foreign objects. So that way, on the surface of canvas, the artists like Picasso, Braque, they decided to put some images which are often like dead butterflies pasted, or these are some jute or some woven cane patterns that they found out from different places. They're all man-made objects, natural objects which were there that got pasted. So when we think of collage, the whole medium talks about certain texture which is not just the visual texture, but it also has a tactile quality in it. So they're actually there, and that gives us a sense of surface which is more expressive. So when we talk about the impasto technique in painting, there the artist is using the paints, the way they're applying the paints on the surface, which is slightly three-dimensional. So they're not smooth. For example, if we have paintings where the surfaces are rough, there is a chance that the paint can get also dry and fall off. So artists need some kind of a control to create that surface where the roughness is maintained. Many of the textile artists also used the similar technique. They didn't like the feel of the artwork in terms of the visual texture. Rather, they preferred the tactile texture to get the surface. So tactile texture is something which is real, and that like when we look at it, it's just like it's just a factor, that is the tangibility and intangibility of the whole thing. So when we talk about the virtual reality, the kind of texture that we put there, they're not touchable, they're not tangible. So that way we can categorize them in visual texture category. And for example, when we have another surface which is a collage that can be touched upon, and also there are surfaces where we feel that the sensation has to be created there. A rough surface also creates the light and shade pattern that changes with different time. So those are the different experiments that the artist keep on doing. So when you look at the artwork, analyze them, you try to recognize the patterns where the textures are created, whether they're visual or tactile, and that way you will see how the artists have used it from different period of time.